It was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. Our son walking across that stage, diplomas in hand, smiles all around. But then, out of nowhere, he stood up in the middle of the ceremony and dropped the bombshell no one expected. He was leaving me, just like that, in front of everyone. Shock froze the room. I remember feeling my world crumble. Humiliation, disbelief, and rage all crashing down at once. But here's the thing. What he thought would break me only made me stronger. Because while he walked out that door, I started planning a comeback that would turn everything upside down. What I did next, it wasn't just revenge, it was justice. The morning sun spilled gently through the curtains, casting a warm golden hue over our home. It was the kind of morning that seemed perfect in every way, quiet, calm, and filled with promise. Outside, the birds chirped softly, greeting the new day as if they sensed the importance of what was to come. Today was our son's graduation day, a milestone we had been dreaming about for years. Inside the house, the air buzzed with a mix of excitement and nervous energy. Balloons swayed slightly with the breeze near the window, their bright colors contrasting against the pale walls. Fresh flowers, arranged carefully on the dining table, lent a subtle fragrance, mingling with the aroma of brewing coffee that promised comfort amidst the chaos of the morning rush. Our son moved through the rooms, his graduation gown hanging ready nearby, his hands nervously adjusting the collar of his shirt. There was a gleam of pride in his eyes, but also a quiet apprehension. He was stepping into a new chapter of his life, a future full of unknowns and possibilities. I watched him with a mother's pride swelling in my chest. This day wasn't just about a piece of paper or a ceremony. It was about everything he had worked so hard for, every sacrifice, every late night, every moment he doubted himself but pushed on anyway. In the kitchen, I tried to steady my own nerves. There were so many details to manage. The small gathering we'd planned afterward, the photographer arriving early, coordinating with family members who were traveling from out of town. I wanted everything to be perfect, not just for him, but for the whole family. Because in my heart, today was about more than just our son. It was a celebration of our journey together. Then there was my husband. He moved quietly through the house, like a shadow, distant and subdued. His usual morning warmth was absent, replaced by a tension I couldn't ignore. I caught glimpses of him avoiding my gaze, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. When I asked if he was feeling all right, he gave me short, distracted answers that barely concealed the storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. For weeks, I had noticed a growing distance between us, small things at first, the way he barely touched my hand when we passed each other in the hallway, the way he seemed lost in thought when I spoke to him, the way his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. I told myself it was just stress, work pressures, worries about the future, or maybe even nerves about the ceremony. I wanted to believe everything would be fine, that this day would bring us back together. But deep down, there was a knot in my stomach that I couldn't shake. As we all gathered to get ready to leave, the house was a flurry of activity. Our son carefully put on his cap and gown, and I smoothed down the edges, trying to calm his jitters. My husband sat silently at the table, staring out the window, his mind somewhere I couldn't reach. The tension between us was like an invisible wall, growing thicker with each passing minute. We piled into the car, the drive to the auditorium filled with quiet moments punctuated by polite small talk. Our son talked excitedly about his plans for college, about the friends he was going to meet, and the adventures he hoped to have. I smiled and nodded, trying to focus on his dreams rather than the cold silence next to me. When we arrived, the crowd was already gathering. Families bustled around, snapping photos and sharing laughter. The air was electric with anticipation. Everywhere I looked, I saw proud parents, hopeful graduates, and teachers beaming with pride. This was a day for celebration, for new beginnings. We found our seats near the front, close enough to see every detail. The smiles, the tears, the proud looks. Our son's face lit up as he saw familiar faces in the crowd. I reached over and squeezed his hand, whispering, "This is your moment. You've earned it." Around us, the murmurs of excitement grew louder. The program was about to begin. Speeches were planned, honors would be announced, and finally, the moment we'd been waiting for, the walk across the stage. But beneath all the joy and excitement, I could feel that knot tighten again. The unease inside me grew sharper, like a quiet warning I didn't want to hear. My husband's jaw was clenched, his fingers tapping anxiously on his leg. His eyes avoided mine completely. Something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, but I knew this day was going to be far from what we had imagined. And then, as the ceremony began and the first names were called, everything changed forever. The graduation day disaster. The auditorium buzzed with a mixture of excitement and pride. Rows upon rows of chairs filled with family, friends, teachers, and graduates created a sea of anticipation. The air was thick with the low hum of conversation. Soft laughter, the rustle of programs, the occasional beep of a camera shutter capturing memories. Everywhere smiles shone bright, and tears of joy glistened in the eyes of proud parents. I sat clutching the program tightly in my hands, heart pounding with a cocktail of nerves and happiness. My son was somewhere nearby, dressed impeccably in his cap and gown. I could barely believe that this day had finally come. Years of homework battles, early mornings, and endless encouragement had led to this moment. He had worked so hard, overcoming challenges that had tested his resolve, and now he was about to walk across that stage and claim the future he deserved. The speaker's voice echoed through the microphone, welcoming everyone and setting the tone for the ceremony. Speeches were given, stories about perseverance, the importance of community, the bright futures awaiting these young adults. Applause rippled through the crowd as each speaker concluded, the energy building like a wave about to crest. Then the moment arrived. The first name was called, and a graduate stood, smiled, and walked proudly across the stage. The crowd erupted in cheers, some snapping photos, others waving or clapping enthusiastically. I caught glimpses of tearful parents and beaming siblings, all basking in the glow of accomplishment, and then our son's name was announced. My breath caught as he stood. His face was calm but radiant, determination shining in his eyes. The applause swelled as he made his way to the center of the stage. The world seemed to narrow, focusing only on him, the culmination of all our hopes and sacrifices. His hand reached out, shook the principals firmly, and took the diploma with a steady grip. I was overwhelmed with pride. Tears welled up, blurring my vision. I wanted to cheer, to scream how proud I was, but I stayed seated, holding back my emotions. I caught his eye for a brief moment and smiled, silently telling him how incredible he was. But just as the applause began to die down and the next name was about to be called, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, my husband rose from his seat. It was as if time slowed. The murmur of the crowd fell away into a tense silence. All eyes turned toward him. His face was expressionless, but there was a hard edge to it, something cold and final. He cleared his throat and spoke in a voice that cut through the quiet, sharp, and deliberate. "I'm leaving." Those two words hung in the air like a thunderclap. A gasp escaped from somewhere near me. Heads turned, eyes widened. People blinked, as if unsure they had heard correctly. The stunned silence was suffocating. Our son froze, mid-step on the stage, his face draining of color. Confusion and pain flickered across his features. The room, filled moments ago with celebration, now crackled with shock and disbelief. I felt my heart slam against my ribs, breath catching in my throat. The blood drained from my face. For a moment I was paralyzed, unable to process what I had just heard. How could he say this, here, now, in front of everyone? The crowd exchanged bewildered glances. Whispers began to ripple out, spreading like wildfire through the seats. Some people stared at my husband, others looked to me, and many's eyes flickered between us like silent questions. I wanted to stand up, to shout, to demand an explanation. But my body refused to move. The humiliation of his public departure was crushing. He didn't offer any more words. No apology, no explanation, no sign of regret. Without a backward glance, he turned and walked out of the auditorium. The sound of his footsteps faded into an unbearable silence. I was left sitting there, alone and exposed. My son's eyes found mine, full of hurt and confusion. He was caught in the middle of a storm he never saw coming. I reached out to him, but the space between us felt vast, filled with questions neither of us could answer. The ceremony continued around us, but it felt like a distant echo. The proud smiles, the cheers, the music, none of it reached me anymore. I was drowning in a sea of betrayal and shock. My family rushed to my side, offering hugs and words of comfort, but the wound was raw and deep. The crowd's applause felt hollow, drowned out by the chaos unfolding in my mind. How could the man I loved abandon us like this? On our son's day of triumph, I felt exposed, humiliated, and completely broken. The moments following his exit were a blur. Friends whispered, family tried to steady me, and our son sat frozen, caught between his own pride and the pain of his father's sudden abandonment. That day, the foundation of our family cracked wide open, reflecting on the relationship. In the quiet that followed the chaos of graduation day, I found myself alone with my thoughts, swirling memories that refused to settle. The house was still, the echoes of the ceremony fading, but inside me a storm raged. I began to rewind the years, searching for signs I might have missed, moments that seemed small, then but now screamed their importance. Memories flickered through my mind like old film reels, scenes from a life I thought I understood. There was the early days of our marriage, bright and full of hope. I remembered how he would surprise me with little things. A cup of coffee waiting in the morning, a gentle touch on my back after a long day, laughter shared over inside jokes no one else understood. Those moments felt like the foundation of our love, steady, warm, unbreakable. I remembered our son's first steps, the way we celebrated every milestone together, birthdays, holidays, simple dinners filled with stories and laughter. We were a team then, partners navigating the chaos of life side by side. The future stretched out before us, full of promise. But as I looked deeper, the film darkened. There were moments that didn't fit the perfect picture. The evenings he came home late without explanation. The times I found his phone locked tight, a barrier I hadn't crossed until now. The silent dinners where words died before they could be spoken. The arguments that started small but ended with slammed doors and bitter silence. I remembered the subtle shifts, the way he stopped asking about my day, the way he avoided eye contact when I tried to talk about us, the cold distance growing between us, like a wall we both hesitated to knock down. There were secrets I sensed but never confronted, late-night texts I wasn't allowed to see, calls taken in another room, moments when his phone buzzed and his expression changed. I told myself to trust him, to believe the best, but doubt had quietly taken root. I wrestled with those memories, feeling a confusing mix of anger, sadness, and guilt. Had I been blind? Was I responsible for the cracks growing beneath us? Or was he simply slipping away? The more I reflected, the clearer it became. Love isn't just about happy moments. It's about facing the hard truths, the fractures hidden beneath the surface. I thought about all the times I tried to reach him, my voice filled with hope, my heart open, only to be met with silence or cold replies. The loneliness in those moments was deafening. I realized how much I had sacrificed, my time, my energy, my dreams, all in the hope that we could stay together, that he would come back to me. And now, after his public departure, those sacrifices felt like they had been one-sided. But amid the pain, a spark of clarity emerged. I understood that I deserved more than empty promises and half-truths. That love should not be a battlefield where one person is left fighting alone. I vowed then to find strength, not just to survive, but to heal, to rebuild, and to reclaim my life. The days after the graduation ceremony blurred together like a relentless storm. The shock of his departure didn't fade. It deepened, settling into every corner of my life like an unwelcome shadow. The world around me moved forward, but I was stuck in a place of raw pain and overwhelming loneliness. At home, the silence was deafening. His absence wasn't just physical, it was a void that echoed with all the promises left unkept and all the love that felt suddenly withdrawn. The house felt emptier than ever. The spaces he once filled, now reminders of what had been lost. Every room held memories, some bittersweet, others sharp and cutting. I walked through the room slowly, touching objects as if they could anchor me back to what we once were. The mornings were the hardest. I'd wake up expecting to see him beside me, only to be met by cold sheets and quiet rooms. The habit of reaching for his hand or sharing a smile was now met with absence. Each morning, the weight of loneliness pressed heavier, like a fog that refused to lift. Outside the walls of our home, the world was no kinder. Friends and acquaintances who once smiled and shared in our happiness now looked at me with pity or whispered behind my back. Some offered support with awkward, hesitant words, unsure how to help. Others kept their distance, uncomfortable with the unfolding drama. Social media buzzed with muted conversations, some sympathetic, some cruel. The humiliation of his public exit was compounded by the judgments and questions swirling in the eyes of the community. Family gatherings became a minefield. Some relatives stood firmly by my side, offering comforting words and steady presence. Others stayed silent, uncertain where their loyalties lay. I felt the sting of whispered doubts and the coldness of unspoken accusations. The fractured family dynamics only deepened my sense of isolation. Even those closest to me sometimes seemed unsure how to navigate the painful new reality. I struggled to maintain a facade of strength for our son. He was the center of my world, a beacon of hope amid the wreckage. His pain was real and raw, and I knew he needed me to be strong, even when I felt shattered inside. We shared quiet moments, talking late into the night, holding on to each other in silence, and reminding ourselves that we still had each other. But beneath the surface, the doubt gnawed at me. The betrayal left me questioning my strength and whether I could rebuild a life that now felt fragile. Some nights, tears fell silently. Other nights, anger flared. Yet through it all, small acts of kindness became my lifeline. The support of friends, a neighbor's call, and a therapist's steady presence helped me find clarity amidst the chaos. I learned healing isn't linear. There would be setbacks, moments of despair, but also resilience, courage, and slow rebuilding of a shattered heart. This was my transformation, a time of darkness that would eventually forge a new strength within me. Determined not to let betrayal define me, I began gathering the truth. His secrets, lies, and hidden motives were uncovered quietly, piece by piece. Texts, emails, and messages revealed betrayals I had only suspected. Each discovery steeled my resolve, and through this process, I reclaimed my power. Legal advice became crucial, helping me understand my rights and the steps I needed to protect myself and my son. The emotional journey was exhausting, but through it, I found strength born of necessity and love for my son. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about reclaiming my life step by step. Months of investigation led me to a new resolve, not just to survive, but to confront, reclaim, and triumph. The stakes were high, with public scars left on me and my son. Planning the comeback meant more than revenge. It required careful strategy, emotional strength, and a solid support system. The emotional journey was exhausting, but through it, I found strength born of necessity and love for my son. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth. It was about reclaiming my life step by step. Months of investigation led me to a new resolve, not just to survive, but to confront, reclaim, and triumph. The stakes were high, with public scars left on me and my son. Planning the comeback meant more than revenge. It required careful strategy, emotional strength, and a solid support system. I mapped out the options with trusted friends and legal advisors, staying focused on what evidence could be presented publicly, how to protect myself and my son, and how to stay emotionally strong. I sought allies carefully, building momentum with each conversation. The goal wasn't humiliation, but justice and closure, reclaiming my voice and dignity. As I prepared emotionally, I reminded myself why I was doing this. For my son, our future, and the woman I was becoming. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to walk. This was more than a comeback. It was a rebirth. The day had come, the one I had dreaded and prepared for. Months of quiet searching led to this, a family gathering under the guise of a reunion. chosen so the truth would be revealed where it mattered most. I spoke calmly, laying out the facts, the lies, the messages, the betrayals. I wasn't here to yell, but to shine a light. Faces shifted from shock to sorrow, and then all eyes turned to him. His defense faltered, cracks showing in his words. Tension rose, emotions spilled, and truth finally replaced the silence. It wasn't the end, but a turning point. In the days that followed, some relationships began to mend, others fell away. My son and I leaned on each other, our bond deepening. I found strength I never knew I had, not just as a wife or mother, but as myself. The circle around me changed. Support replaced gossip, and I began reclaiming my story. Healing wasn't about forgetting, but about moving forward with scars as proof of survival. Betrayal didn't break me. It transformed me. Strength is quiet, steady, and born from rising every time you fall. If you're hurting, know you are not alone. Your story isn't over and hope is still ahead. Thank you for watching and walking through this chapter with me. If this story resonated, hit subscribe and join our community of strength and resilience. Remember, your past doesn't define you, but your courage does. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and keep writing your next chapter.